You're back with the Long Lunch with Wendyl Nissen on RadioLIVE. Time now to talk about a new treatment that you may have heard of if you've been listening to the show with our regular contributor David Downs, who recently went to the States and was successfully treated using CAR-T therapy. Well, good news is there's some moves to get it here in New Zealand, and one of the men responsible for this is Rob Weinkove. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Tell me, let's just recap on the CAR-T therapy and how this works.
Yeah, so CAR-T cell therapy is a different type of treatment for cancer. It's a bit different to giving drugs or just medicines to people, and what it involves is actually taking cells out from a patient, immune cells out from a patient, and modifying them in the laboratory to redirect them against a tumour or a cancer. You then return them back to the patient as a treatment with these re-educated immune cells.
So it's kind of an immunotherapy, isn't it? It's like using your immune system to help your own body.
That's right. It is an immunotherapy. I mean, there's already several immunotherapies that we use routinely for various malignancies. This one's a little bit different in that you're actually redirecting the cells permanently, and that means there's a prospect, at least for some patients, of having a long-lasting control of their cancer. And we are seeing in some malignancies, in some of the trials coming out of the States and overseas, that patients still in remission several years later. So that's very exciting news.
Now, you you heard me mention earlier David Downs, who's a regular contributor on the show. So he had a blood cancer. So is it just for kind of leukemia and that kind of cancer at the moment, or can it be used for others eventually, do you think?
So there are actually a huge number of CAR-T cell trials worldwide, and people are trying to use this technology for a whole range of malignancies. The greatest success so far has been in certain types of lymphoma and certain types of leukemia. And in the United States and Europe, there are a couple of CAR-T cell therapies that are licensed for those indications. We haven't yet seen those amazing successes with solid cancers, but there are a huge number of research centers working, and in fact now large pharmaceutical companies working very hard on that. So we may see some more promising results from those in the future.
So you are of the Malaghan Institute. That's where you work. You're in Wellington. Tell me, it's very expensive. I read somewhere like it's the machine needed is like $2 million or something. So how are you getting this into New Zealand?
So the first thing is that we don't have a CAR-T cell therapy available right now. What we are doing is we are partnering with an overseas organization to hope in the plan to run an early phase trial of a new generation of CAR-T cell treatment that we think might have some benefits over existing treatments. Now, we are planning to conduct the manufacturing locally, if we can do that. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of regulation required. You're quite right that if you go off and seek to receive these treatments commercially in the United States or in Europe for that matter, at the moment they're very expensive. That's because of the personalization of the treatment, so it does require making the cells individually from each person separately. And in addition, depending on where you're treated, in the States often the hospitals charge quite high costs for their patient care. And as David would know, there are some toxicities of this treatment that require very close monitoring after its delivery. So I think there are a number of ways we'll see the costs come down in future years, partly because of competition, perhaps from a construct like that we're going to use, or perhaps from other constructs, but also secondly because there's a great deal of incentive to make the manufacturing cheaper and possibly even to make off-the-shelf cells that don't require the personalized manufacture in the future. So there's a huge amount of research going on in this. We'd like to contribute in our small way by running an early phase trial of a construct, and we hope to have some news about that in future months, but I can't talk about what we're going to do right now until we've got the approvals in place.
Very exciting. Just a question that might be a little bit basic for you, but I hope you'll bear with me. When we have a new drug pharmaceutical companies obviously back it, they back the studies, because they can make a lot of money out of it. This is not a drug, so does that make it harder? This is more a treatment, so does that make it harder to get funding for it?
This is a really good question. And,
good.
No, it's a really good question because it isn't a conventional drug. It's a personalized product that's made by modifying a patient's cells.
Yeah.
And in fact, in practical terms, it's most similar to a procedure that we already do in New Zealand called bone marrow transplantation or stem cell transplantation, which is already a routine treatment for many types of blood cancer. It does seem that because of the way the cells are modified in the laboratory, big pharmaceutical firms have entered this space, and at the moment it is being regulated like a pharmaceutical. And you're quite right, the regulatory requirements are very high, the safety standards and the manufacturing standards are very high, and it does mean that if that's the way this is going to run, it makes it difficult for organizations other than large pharmaceutical firms to get into the space. Now, there are a number of academic institutions worldwide working on this, including colleagues I'm in close contact with in Australia, seeking to run this more through existing bone marrow transplant units. We don't yet know how this is going to be regulated in New Zealand, and in a way, our entering this area is possibly a good way to help develop that system of how these are going to be regulated, how they're going to be monitored. And we're working very closely with our regulatory agencies about that, and we've been speaking with them very closely about how to deliver this safely and effectively.
This is all so exciting. So well done, you guys, for bringing it into the country. Can you give us a timeline? I always get so excited. I'm like, quick.
We're very excited. We'd love to be able to offer something in the coming year, but it really is dependent on a lot of things that are beyond our direct control, including making sure that we've ticked all those regulatory boxes and that everybody's happy that we can deliver this safely. Not least ourselves. We want to make sure we do it well.
So you're not giving me a timeline?
Well, we are. No. We're very committed to setting up a trial in the near future.
All right, that sounds lovely. I know you're very busy, so I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Wendyl. Thank you.
Dr Rob Weinkove there from Malaghan Institute, who are bringing this new CAR-T therapy to New Zealand. What great news. And as you know, I always get so excited. I'm always like, please, say you can do it now. But we'll have to be patient. We'll be back in a moment.